Siri is starting to have conversations with the couch potatoes of America through the new Apple TV.
IBM buys weather without the channel.
Amazon lets you watch paint dry streaming live.
And the latest frontier of TV hackers, virtual reality.
Welcome to the November 1st edition of Hacking TV. I'm Saul Hansel.
And I'm Steve Rosenbaum. Hey, Saul.
Hi, Steve. So the Apple TV was out on Friday. How long did you hold out?
So what day is today? I held out 48 hours or so.
Okay, so you bought an Apple TV today, Sunday afternoon. And what have you done with it so far?
So first of all, let's do a virtual box break. I'll open it up and tell you. It doesn't get set up quite as easily. I mean, there's a beautiful little trick where you're supposed to be able to hold your phone up to it, and it's supposed to magically move over all your accounts. And I was excited to try that because I thought that was very cool. But in fact, it doesn't work. So, or at least didn't work for me. So that was disappointing. Some of the reviews I read were baffled as to why they moved from a block of text when you're signing in to a strip of letters. So you have to slide up and down the alphabet. So actually getting some of the things set up was a little bit painful. That being said, the little slider remote with the clicker is actually pretty beautiful, and you feel your finger get used to it. It doesn't have that four-way toggle that you expect, but once you get used to it, it works pretty well. And the screen animations, the standby screen animations, the moving screens when the TV is in standby are unbelievably gorgeous, like heart-stoppingly beautiful.
Just like what used to be like the animals and the screensaver?
Yeah, now it's live motion. There's like a picture of the city of New York, and it's got cars driving, and it's just little movement. It's not, it would almost play in the background as just background images, but it's just very beautiful. Very gorgeous.
I saw on some of the video reviews, I don't have one yet, but I'm probably going to get one this week. When you move the tiles around for the movies and the apps, they seem to have a little parallax built into them. I don't know whether the app maker has to define foreground and background, or whether they have an algorithm that can go figure that out. But
I mean, the reviews were fascinating, right? Because the reviews were basically like, it's great, but it's not mind-blowing. And for those of us who are in the TV space, we know that Apple has been out negotiating with networks, desperately trying to put together its own over-the-top package of, a couple of networks and a couple of movie, and they just weren't able to get the deals done.
So, just to walk through the unboxing, have you had a conversation with Siri yet?
I have.
And what did you and Siri talk about, and how satisfying was that?
So, I have to say, I've been thinking a lot about the movie Her.
Uh-huh.
I find in the last 2 weeks, between my iPhone and now the TV, I am beginning to talk to Siri. I am.
Are you falling in love, Steve?
I'm falling in like.
Okay.
I'm falling in deep like. I like being able to say, because I have it set on my phone so that I can say, hey, Siri, and it automatically listens to me. Hey, Siri, text Pam, my wife. And she says, what would you like me to say to Pam? And I'm like, and every time I'm like, that's kind of cool.
And in fact, you can say to it sometimes, hey, Siri.
By the way.
My wife, yeah?
So my phone is sitting next to me.
Yes.
And Siri just said, what would you like me to text Pam?
Would you like to send, cancel, review, or change it?
Cancel.
Okay, I won't send it.
That's
creepy.
a plot point in at least like a TV detective show or something like that.
It's a little creepy. A little creepy.
A little. And does the remote also wait for you to say, hey, Siri, and just pop up?
No, you have to press the little microphone button. But the translation is remarkably good. I mean, you say, hey, Siri, I want to watch Saturday Night Live, and it goes and gets it.
This is
Oh,
good.
I just did it again.
Um,
I don't know how to shut it off, actually.
hey Siri, stop listening to me. Does that
I
work?
don't think so.
No. So you've only had it for the. Have you downloaded any new apps yet?
I downloaded Netflix
Uh huh.
and had a little bit of trouble getting it to work. Not because of Netflix, but just because it's a bunch of passwords and stuff. One of the criticisms, which I thought was a legitimate criticism, was if you can do everything via voice, why can't you say to the password ABCD at gmail.com?
And you can't.
Nope.
No.
So that's a little sad.
I think speech recognition for letters is more problematic than for words, but they should solve that. You should be able to have a password that's a word, or, a sentence or something.
But by the way, this goes back to the thesis that you've been promoting now almost since we began this podcast 15 weeks ago. And I'm beginning to understand your point of view. I mean, it is beautiful. The apps are all well built. They're only letting things into their ecosystem that pass their rigorous quality standards. So you're not going to get, all of the nonsense that you get, with Android, with crazy apps that don't work.
On the other hand, I mean, I went and I read a bunch of reviews of the top 30 apps to download for your Apple TV on week 1. And it's very interesting that a minority of them, a very small minority, are what you would consider a Roku-style video app. Yes, College Humor has one. A couple of networks that hadn't been on Apple TV, like CBS, put out ones that are just like what they have on the iPad. But there's a lot more. There's a lot of games, and Apple seems to be pushing this big time as a game platform. And a lot of weird hybrids like you see on the iPad. Recipe apps, and a workout app, and Periscope for live video from Facebook. And so the experimentation around what can you do with this has already started. Yeah. And, something's going to be a hit that nobody expects.
So I'll just a couple more little early. So ABC has an app.
Yep.
And I'm not a cable subscriber, but I installed it and it said you can watch any of these shows for free without being signed up through TV Everywhere. So that's interesting. So then I watched the first minute of Shark Tank, which had a commercial and didn't tell me the countdown, but said stand by until this commercial ends. And it was a Android commercial, interestingly enough. And it was long. It was 30 seconds. And I suffered through it, and I fast forwarded to midway through the show and pressed play, and it said, hold on a minute, and it played the same commercial again.
I don't know why the people at all these video streaming companies don't realize that, yes, they're making extra money, overbilling the Android companies or whatever, but they so piss off people, the same commercial the second time is 10 times worse than it was the first time.
Honestly, I don't even know who to blame. I mean,
ABC. Let's blame
Apple?
ABC.
What? No, but I mean, is it Apple? Is it ABC? Like, where did that commercial come from?
I have not read that Apple has got into the video ad network business. Although, boy, is that a logical thing for them to do. They have iAds, they own Apple TV, but so my guess is that's at this point sold by ABC or a vendor to ABC, but could be wrong,
So now I'm the end user.
Yep.
And I've got Shark Tank on my TiVo. I've recorded it off the air, and I can fast forward through the commercials and watch a 60-minute show in 42 minutes.
Yep.
Or I can watch it on my Apple TV, but I'm going to watch 4 or 6 commercials. And the picture's more beautiful, and I don't have over-the-air drama with, cutting in and out, but I'm still thinking I might be scampering back to TiVo on that one.
If you really are going to still pay for cable at the same rate and have linear streaming TV coming into your house, which will, okay, but most people get their DVRs from their cable companies, and the cable companies are very quickly moving to cloud-based DVRs with no local recording, where they can control commercial skipping. And I have a strong suspicion that the deal is going to converge. The arbitrage you're talking about is not going to last.
Yeah, although one could argue that TiVo's been operating in that arbitrage world for now 10 years happily. And
Well, because of the FCC and the allowing you to buy a set-top box with a cable card, to the extent that that still is a live thing, yeah, you'll be able to buy TiVo, but the one you get from Comcast or Time Warner can do only what Comcast and Time Warner want it to do.
right. And by the way, one more thing about Apple TV, just in the good news category, they do the right thing, which is if you ask Siri for X, Y, or Z, she shows you the free one first, and if you're a Netflix subscriber, she shows you the Netflix version next. And so the only thing that seems to be missing, and we've read about this and we know that the drama is ongoing, is no Amazon Kindle Fire and Kindle or Amazon
Fire
TV, or whatever. And Apple has said we're happy to have an Amazon app, bring it on. And Amazon has responded with an enormous amount of silence. Not likely that they're going to port Amazon Prime Video to the Apple TV.
Well, it's an interesting question what the dispute is, given that Amazon is happily on Roku and other subscription services are on Apple TV. I suspect it comes down to the 30%. It may, Amazon also has a big pay-per-view business, and I have a strong guess that that Apple will not let Amazon put its pay-per-view up without paying 30% to Apple, which Amazon doesn't feel like doing. So, but we don't know. We know that Apple will sell a bunch of these, but Amazon is big and powerful. I think we can, it's going to be very interesting to see how the apps snowball. One of the more interesting apps, a little bit Rube Goldberg, right, is one of the workout apps. If you have the Apple Watch on, the virtual Jane Fonda will tell you you're not working hard enough if your heartbeat isn't beating. And right, so you start to have, a two-way television. Speaking of which, is there a Skype app? I guess they haven't thrown a camera on the damn thing, which is bizarre because that feels like it should be a very logical application. But
it's a fair question. I'll look for. So let's leave it at this for this week. I will be your guinea pig. Unless you want to race out and buy one, consider me in charge of testing it, and I will be back with detailed feedback next week.
So one of the things we're going to keep watching here is how does cable react to all this, right? The two news stories in the last week that I think are starting to show that cable is, in the cable programming side of cable, is starting to see itself as a lower growth business that's got to be desperate. I saw True TV, formerly Court TV, that Time Warner owns, is reducing its commercial load by 7 minutes an hour to deal with what you were talking about, which is people hate a billion commercials, and if you have them, people will skip past them anyway. And maybe, and much more interesting, the Weather Channel sold everything but the channel to IBM. So IBM has the consumer website and all their weather forecasting stuff and their industrial business. What do we make of that?
I think that I will tell you. So years ago, my previous company, Magnify, powered user-generated video for the Weather Channel. Before Dave Kennedy, this is two management teams ago. And I flew to Atlanta and had a meeting at the Weather Channel. And let me tell you, I have never been in a more secure building in my entire life other than the Israeli embassy. When you enter through a double airlock, you have to walk through a glass door which then seals behind you, and then they check your ID, and then the second door opens. You know, I came away thinking that it was like a secret government CIA operation.
Well, since IBM may well be a secret government CIA operation, or has been at various times, maybe this is a homecoming.
You know, and by the way, I say that not trying to create any paranoia, because I really don't believe that. But clearly they have access to an enormous amount of data, and that data is very important, and that data impacts the economy, and it impacts business, and it impacts, you know what's going to happen if to large swatches of the population if cities are underwater. And so I understand why that data is hugely valuable. I don't understand what happens to the cable network now that it's cleaved from the data business.
So the thing we need to point out is that the Weather Company, as it's now called, is owned jointly by Comcast, NBC Universal, and a buyout firm. Once you get a buyout firm involved, they want a cash-on-cash return, and so selling a big chunk of it to a big rich company, pays down a bunch of the debt, and et cetera. The channel, without even its internet operation, is pretty wimpy. I mean, I think that's a dangerous choice when you think about when you take media properties and split them apart, like in the Web 1.0 era when Ziff Davis sold ZDNet to CNET, and then suddenly their magazines had no internet sites and they had to go build up another ZDNet. It doesn't make any sense, right? So the Weather Channel, I mean, I'm sure they figured this out at some level, but they're saying this is a, dying business that we're not going to, which we don't see as being a growth property at a minimum.
Now, back to Apple for just a second. You asked me if I downloaded any apps, and I'd said Netflix. But the second app I downloaded was the Weather Channel.
Okay.
Because it was free, and I wanted local weather. Thought that might be neat. Maybe in this OTT world, the Weather Channel has a magic resurgence.
It well could, not having to wait through the clock and being able to push a button and get the up-to-date weather forecast that starts when you want, I think is a good idea. One of the things that the Weather Cable Channel has, and David Kenny has talked publicly a little bit about this, is they have built into cable head ends, the little neighborhood cells that drive your cable, technology to superimpose your local weather on the screen. And there's a sense that may be able to build some sort of hyper-local, CNN for your neighborhood. Hyper-local has been a tough sell in the internet, but TV is a better business than the internet. So there's a possibility there, but it's going to take some capital and, some ingenuity. So moving forward, Amazon's Twitch TV unit, which is fascinating, we've talked about a lot, launched a new service called Twitch Creative Channel. And the idea here, and this is, I guess, picking up on stuff that people are already doing, you can watch artists at work, making their oil paintings or, photoshopping photographs or making sculptures. And if you want that live cam into the studio, it's there for you, either free with ads or, no ads for a subscription. And do we think that a lot of people are going to want to watch, the next Van Gogh splattering paint on the oil paint?
Why do you think they picked art?
I think what I read is that there's some artists who've been doing it, and they're just packaging up activity that exists.
So we've talked before about YouNow. I mean, YouNow does teen chat musicians and performers in live chat rooms. They just raised a bunch of money. They seem to be having terrific traffic. But that's not what Twitch is doing.
I think there is some psychological interest in that virtual window to another place. And again, it may be multitasking. I think I mentioned here that my sister is addicted to pet cams. Like if you're in a bad mood, turn on the kitten cam, and it's just a cam on one of those, live TV streaming sites, aimed at a little nest of baby hamsters or something.
And the family hasn't discussed getting her a pet as an option.
This is a grown sister who lives in California, who has one of the grouchiest cats on the planet. So this may be compensation, but it's. I found it surprising, but after having gone to the porn convention and seen all the different booths for all of one category of fetishes that people have.
I want to point out, Saul, this was work related, right? This wasn't like
it was actually was. I wasn't even there for the porn. I was there for the spam. I was covering spam in the early 2000s, and the spammers were gathering at the Bellagio during the porn convention.
CES.
Yes.
The weird connection of. Anyway, yes. So I don't know what Twitch is doing, and YouTube is clearly going after Twitch. They want gamers badly, and they're promoting their live gaming channel. So, this doesn't feel like Twitch firing back at YouTube, like we're going to take away your artists, your live artists. But maybe you're right.
It's them doubling down. I remember Twitch TV came out of Justin TV that was doing all kinds of live streaming, and I think the guys there saw an opportunity. I watched it for about 2 minutes. And, as far as I can tell, my life was no better with the thing turned on and turned off, but I guess I'm not the customer.
And by the way, I used the link you sent me, but it says creative and wants me to log in before it will show me the creative channels. And so
that's interesting. I don't know, maybe I'm logged in with Amazon or something. I don't know, but I could,
it was more effort that I was prepared to spend at the end of a long day.
However, speaking of effort, you want to go to the effort of talking about virtual reality. To the audience, whoever you may be, you may not know, but Steve runs one of the great meetups of New York. It's the New York Video Meetup.
Thank you.
That is a vibrant community. It's been going for how long?
Well, I took it over 5 years ago, but it's probably 5 years before that, maybe more than 10 years, and it has 3,900 members. It's the second largest meetup in the world, second only to the big tech meetup, the Mamaship, and it's great. I mean, the people are amazing. It's very inspirational to be part of that group.
So if you're in New York, you will see the people showing off their latest inventions, companies, ideas, work. It's great for ideas. And you had a bunch of, something made a little light bulb go off over your head.
It's the rule of three.
Okay.
If something happens once in a week, I write it down. If it happens twice in a week, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And this week, VR hit the rule of three, and I think really kind of came in its own. So the first thing I did was Tuesday night, I spent the evening at an event called Pivot, which is a terrific conference. They now do a series of evening events leading up to the main Pivot conference, and one of them was about virtual reality. And I went kind of on a lark, and there were so many companies demoing, and it was, to me, what was interesting was there were brands there were people selling car VR, there was, it was, entertainment was part of the story, but clearly brands are excited about showing their products or showing their experiences in commercials that are long form, that blur the line between entertainment and narrative and commercials. And I got to tell you, very much enjoyed driving the Porsche. Really enjoyed it. The other thing I learned Tuesday night was that there is a difference between stereoscopic VR and monoscopic VR. And monoscopic VR is a flat image that wraps around that you can see by turning your head or moving your phone. And stereoscopic VR, I guess, is significantly harder to produce, but much more immersive. And also, it turns out, tends to make your audience, if you give them too much of it, a little nauseous.
isn't there a third category, right? So sometimes you want virtual reality. When you turn your head, you're seeing different stuff. But isn't there also just, you know, personal 3D, right? The equivalent of watching the latest, you know, Superman movie or whatever that would be in 3D. So you have one view, but how many of the people are doing 3D single view versus 3D or 2D, you know,
I don't
multiple
know.
views?
Again, three hits this week. So I'll tell you the first one. I don't know the answer to that question. The
Okay.
second one was the video meetup was Thursday night at HBO, and we had a company called Evo present EEVO, which is a studio that aggregates and curates the best in VR. And he was mobbed after the presentation with people that wanted to try on Oculus, wanted to experiment with it. I actually had another event I had to go to and left about 20 minutes after when the social gathering happened, and I was told that basically we had to kind of peel people off of him so he could leave. And then the New York Times and Google announced that they are going to start producing short documentaries and news coverage in VR, and they are going to ship this coming weekend, which is November 7th and 8th, every one of their print subscribers a free Google Cardboard, which is a VR lens, which I have around here somewhere actually. But they have 1.1 million print subscribers, and they're going to ship out 1.1 million VR viewers. That's a lot of viewers.
And so, what do you think? So let's just assume that, you know, this or the next one, and everybody has the ability to stick their cell phone into the viewer, you know, and basically it divides the cell phone screen into two half screens, so you have a stereoscopic viewer. When is someone going to say it's worth the hassle of sticking the thing on your face?
So I think
maybe all the time, every now and then, just some subset. Who?
I think gamers will do it first because they
Okay.
already are used to being in 3D worlds, and the idea of having more and they're already probably playing by themselves with a group of other people, and so wearing a helmet's no big deal. So I think gamers will happen fast, and I think that's why. And then Zuckerberg is counting on the fact that people want to have Facebook communities where they can actually interact in a 3D world. I'll be interested to see what he's building around that. I happen to think that the New York Times audience probably will play with it, but I don't see them as the early adopters of holding up the card. You know, Google Cardboard's kind of a funny device because you have to hold it up. You have to put your phone in it and then hold it up like this. So it's a little like a pair of binoculars. That being said, though, the reason why I think it's important for our audience is even if it's as simple as being able to watch a video on YouTube and with your mouse slide the screen left and right. If I'm watching, you know, the political debates or a convention, I might like to see what's going on around the room and not just where. And by the way, it raises great questions for journalists who used to be able to say, here's how I'm framing the story. And now it's like, yeah, well, thank you, but I kind of want to look over there.
Well, I'm thinking a lot about that. I mean, I'm thinking about there is work. And so there's a threshold, right? This is why we, you know, at this point in the world, we don't have billions of, you know, make your own ending novels, or, you know, the technology has been there to do all kinds of things. And in the video game world, where people pay $50 a shot and there's a finite number of titles, you can spend $10 or $20 million on a production. So the question is, if I'm shooting a frame, right, and I'm trying to make it neat and not distracting, and outside of the frame is the messiness of the world, either I don't want to show you because it looks like a studio, or if you look at it, it's just not the thing you want to see. How much work should I do in trying to optimize that experience in the periphery? When is that worthwhile to all of us? When is it worthwhile for all the other production side of it? Sometimes.
So
yep.
As we're running out of time, I will stipulate for the purposes of this debate, you think it's probably 3D, and I think it's something massively more interesting than that, and either one of us could be right.
No, well, I'm not saying it's only 3D. I'm saying each thing you do has a cost, and
Yep.
to both the producer and the consumer, the viewer. I mean, one thing that I think is this might be better, not with the cardboard you described, for more lean back experiences. If I'm going to play a game for a long time, right, I'm not going to hold the thing up if I can, unless I'm totally addicted for a game, or I want to watch a 3D movie or a 3D, travel video. That's one thing. For clip video, it have to be pretty damn good. Like the new Porsche demo, sure, but how many of those are there?
We will continue to track this, and we will hack away. And with that, we are out of time.
So
I'll
you're
have an excellent
traveling.
week.
You have a tough assignment in Hawaii next week.
I will bring
We'll-
back data from Hawaii.
We will, hear what you have discovered. Couple of little announcements to our fan out there. Our website, where you have show pages and all kinds of things that you probably don't ever want to use, is now up at hackingtv.news. We are back and in good form on the iTunes store for subscribing to the audio podcast. You can find us on Waywire and YouTube for the video version of this. You can write us at hackers@hackingtv.news. We're everywhere.
We'll see you next week.
Next week.
And we are clear.
We've gotten this drill down.